Welcome to the Short Funk Podcast. I'm Tom Barberley. I was listening to an African-American activist being interviewed recently, and he noted that the Turner Diaries, the novel called the Turner Diaries, had impacted so much of US culture that it was required reading. And once you read it, you would have a profound understanding of how many people in positions of power, in particular law enforcement, had clearly read and embodied the Turner Diaries. And very similar to Mein Kampf, and I've never read Mein Kampf, but very similar to Mein Kampf, there was important historical reading to get some understanding of where we are from all parties. This was a very profound thought to me. I'm aware of the Turner Diaries. I've never read the Turner Diaries, but they struck me historically as the kind of text where there was no benefit in actually reading them. Understanding that they were there in some intellectual sense and that some people might have utilized them. Timothy McVeigh is always the pronounced example, but I actually think they're probably considerably more well-read. This was an interesting thing, and as people might listen to these short funk recordings, as people might listen to my regular podcasts in general, the nature of the stuff that I do, particularly when they, I don't know how one would describe it, when they might cross political boundaries, this might strike a certain group of people as very curious. But with this in mind, and also because if you look at it as an impactful historical work, there is some validity to this. I've started to read the Turner Diaries. It is very, very strange, and it does indicate really strongly that there is a substantial part of this country's narrative that has been shaped by this particular book. A lot of the stuff that is somewhat idiosyncratic in the general dialogue comes directly from this book. We're talking mainstream political views here in this country. And in that light, I have to agree that thinking people probably should read the Turner Diaries just to get a strange indication of an origin of a narrative which is so strong and so perverse in this country. And also the way in which racism is a part of the Turner Diaries, without question. But that actually what has evolved through this is the aspects of the Turner Diaries that aren't, well, the whole thing is racist in nature, but the way in which certain ideas and information is prefaced, independent of racism. Like these ideas, we just evolved these ideas without thinking about them in a racist context. The Turner Diary seems to indicate very strongly that this has had an impact on a lot. What I find particularly curious, particularly looking at Field of Chaos as a book that I wrote when I was, 15, 17, is that it reads like aspects of the Turner Diaries. A lot of the metaphysics, a lot of the approaches to describing a repressive government, while explicitly not connected with the stuff that's talked about in the Turner Diaries, the language is very similar. This was a 15-year-old boy in Australia who'd never had any access to this thing. Somehow this thing, this description associated with living in a repressive state, exists perhaps independently of particular political perspectives. But it is very curious the way that this means of addressing a repressive state in many people, I guess, is so heavily affected by the Turner Diaries. It's really been a very interesting process. I haven't finished them. I'm going to finish them. It's interesting traveling through international borders with such a book, but we'll work through that somehow. It's a fascinating thing to do. I have to agree with the premise that reading this thing as a sense of historical context, but more importantly as a sense of how much of the established way of thought has been heavily impacted by such a strange and perverse book. I'm going to record a concluding short funk associated with getting to the end of this thing. I just wanted to put it out here now. Very curious, very worthwhile in some really strange and profound way. Tom Barberley in San Jose, signing out.